My screen share. Sharing the screen. Oh, sorry, folks.
Franklin County, and the proposed prison there has dominated the headlines. Um, as you mentioned, I believe that the fiscal session will be starting earlier of next year. And when you don't have representation like that with, budget spending and that sort of thing, where does that leave those residents?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's everything. It's all the issues in front of you, whatever you care about, whether it's education, rural hospitals, broadband connections, technology, farm assistance. I mean, there are so many issues that are important to voters across the state. And that's why we have these representatives, right? That's why we have them there, is to represent their communities and their voters and the folks in those communities that have a very specific perspective. So yes, the prison has been in the news a lot, but by not allowing them to have a representative in the fiscal session, I mean, you're talking about billions of dollars in taxpayer money that's being allocated for the fiscal year in that fiscal session. And to have voters who won't have a say in that and won't have representation in that is really a tragedy and, in our opinion, unconstitutional.
So, folks, that was October 7th. That was from Conduit News. That was Jenny Lauren interviewing the lawyer, attorney Jennifer Standifer. There has been an update to that, and I'll share this here. Judge Patricia James has ruled in favor of Colt Shelby in his lawsuit against Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Jennifer Standifer was his attorney. I reached out to the AG's office this afternoon to see if we can offer the court an agreed calendar. I look forward to their response. Senate District 26 and I are hoping the governor will move quickly to set an expedited special election schedule. Unfortunately, the Attorney General, under the orders of Sarah Huckabee Sanders, has decided to appeal the case. So it's probably going to go to the Arkansas Supreme Court. I'm not sure when that court ruling will take place. As soon as I know, I will let you all know. But it is a victory for today. Here is the actual court case here, also from Conduit News' Facebook page. You can read the whole thing. I won't post it. I won't read every single letter of this. In a nutshell, when there is an absence within a legislative seat, either by death or by resignation or by removal in some other way, when that happens, the election is supposed to happen within 150 days, or roughly 4 to 5 months or so, somewhere around that time frame. Instead, Sarah Huckabee Sanders wants to not have that election until, I believe it was June was her date, which would be well after the Arkansas fiscal session, which, as you mentioned before, as you saw before, does start in January. So yeah, Sarah Huckabee Sanders is trying to basically not have to deal with a conservative, which would likely replace Gary Stubblefield, who passed away a few weeks ago. So I'm going to go ahead and put the link to this Facebook post here so you can all look at this. Of course, it's on Conduit News. Actually, let me see if I can just go to the Conduit News post. That way you don't have to go for the whole thing. Because they have a whole bunch of photos. There's another thing going on regarding the sale of cattle. Here's the actual. I think this is the post. If I can get to the post without having to share the whole thing. One of the problems with Facebook is sometimes it's a little difficult to share entire post. It's like you either have to click on the photo or you click on the whole. You get to go to comments, but you can't do the whole post itself. I don't know why Facebook does that. It's like I just want to share the post itself. So you can see some of the comments out here. I reminded people about the tax increases happening November 18th. Oddly enough, both these special elections do cost money, but the longer you string them out, the more they cost. Here we go, copy link. That's what I needed to do. So there you go. You can read that at your own leisure. Now, according to comments that are in this post that I accidentally hit the X on. I did not mean to do that. Let me go to my notifications so I can go back to share screen. Sorry about that. I asked about what was going to happen regarding the District 70 election. That happens to be the area where Carlton Wing had resigned. And I got this response from Scott Perkins. The same judge will hear District 70's case at 1:30 p.m. Tuesday in Pulaski County. And the Attorney General, Jim Griffin, has stated he is planning to appeal the state's decision for the Colts case. That's where we're at. So thank you, Scott Perkins, for that update. Next Tuesday, which I believe would be the 28th at 1:30, if you can, show up to the Pulaski County court case. House to hear about District 70. This is an area that's North Little Rock and Sherwood. Unfortunately, because of the failures of the Republican Party to fight in blue areas, it is still a very blue state, a very blue section of the state of Arkansas. So it will be difficult to. It's been contested before. As a matter of fact, there was an attempt to steal that election a few elections ago in Pulaski County. There was a bunch of funny business regarding ballots. They did manage to steal an election from, who was this guy named? He was in the Arkansas Senate. His name was Jim, and I can't remember his last name. It was a few elections ago. Anyway, Pulaski County has had a problem with election ballots being misplaced, mishandled, being stolen. Of course, this guy right here is running for Secretary of State to deal with that. There was recently, I guess I'll give an update on that since I mainly wanted to talk about this, but I'll sidebar to this for just a little bit.
What do we have going on?
So for those who don't know, Colonel Conrad Reynolds was arrested originally for electioneering, and then it was changed to loitering. Another person has been arrested for electioneering in regards to the fight against paper ballots. Allegedly, Colonel Reynolds was within 100 feet of a polling location. It turns out he was doing what's known as exit polling, which under the law and under a court opinion by then Attorney General Mike Beebe, who, by the way, is a Democrat, who was and is a Democrat, stated that exit polling is not electioneering. So there was a big brouhaha by Attorney General Jim Griffin recently, a few days ago, to arrest Colonel Reynolds. For those who don't know, if you type in Colonel Reynolds, you see his statements regarding this. He went to turn himself into Batesville, Independence County Courthouse, and then they had a big rally regarding that. But apparently, this is video of Governor Sanders, who may have been also, quote unquote, loitering at a voting location. This, by the way, is done by Brian Norris, who is running for Arkansas Secretary of State in the primary election. Now, I don't know. There are two other candidates that are running for Secretary of State. I don't know what they've said regarding this. I actually have not seen this video. This just came out 4 minutes ago. So while I'm doing this broadcast, I'll show this, and then I'll talk a little bit more about another issue, an article written on what's being done regarding conservatives in Arkansas.
Here.
Sorry. Did it mute him? They muted him.
Guys, these are people voting, and there's a news crew in there videoing where they're voting. Let's continue, shall we? It gets better.
100% definitely voted for him.
Now, call me crazy, but I do believe that that is none other than Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders sitting out in the lobby of where people are voting, conducting an interview. Is an interview a lawful purpose, Jared?
Well, that's not under the law.
I don't think that's a lawful purpose, guys.
Yeah.
I don't think that at all. But let's continue, shall we?
I feel great. I mean, you know, there's not a poll in the country that not only has him dominating on Super Tuesday, but also in November. This is a head-to-head matchup at this point between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and he's the clear favorite.
It's so good. It's so good. It's so good, Jared.
It's perfect.
All the momentum, and I feel really good about him winning again in November.
So,
Hello, Peter. What's happening?
So apparently, let me get out of that. Well, folks, while I look for the next screen, let me stop sharing for just a little bit. Apparently, and for those who don't know, Brian Norris was arrested. I'm sorry, not Brian Norris. Conrad Reynolds was again arrested regarding loitering. But not only was Sarah Huckabee Sanders voting there, had a news crew in there while people were voting. Other people who may have been disagree with her were on camera as well. But she also talked about in some way endorsed and seemed to support Donald Trump in the middle of that election. All of which were county chairs are not supposed to be endorsing candidates. Lots of other folks are not allowed to endorse candidates, yet there she is right in there in the polling area. And as a governor, as a support, actually, I don't remember if she was governor then, casting a vote for Donald Trump to look like she supported as being a conservative. By the way, if she was a supporter of Donald Trump, she would be pushing for paper ballots, as Donald Trump is doing. She would not be trying to make every effort to sabotage the attempt to put paper ballots and get rid of the ES&S voting machines. So, folks, Sarah Huckabee Sanders and many of the Republicans that are in the state of Arkansas are there because Arkansas is a red state. It has been a red state for some time. And while other states have kind of bounced back and forth, many of them are, of course, battleground states. One of the reasons why Sleepy Joe was able to be installed as president by globalists was because Republicans failed to make efforts to make those states red. The Republican leadership at the time was run by Ronna McDaniel, and she was an absolute failure. But this is an article that talks a little bit about that issue. Arkansas was not always red for decades, almost a century. State was owned by Democrats. and Republicans were next to nowhere. It should be noted that when Democrats were running the state and we were dead last in almost everything, a lot of these associations, like the Association of Counties, the Chamber of Commerce, the Municipal League, were around. And then around 2009, it was really, I think, Obamacare Medicaid expansion, I think, is when that started to happen, is the Tea Party, the Tax Enough Already Party, got together. This is an article by Val Emmons talking about how she met at various meetings. There were several Tea Party chapters that were sprung up. I actually was part of that as well. And we did a lot of efforts to turn Arkansas red. I remember being in the Little Rock Library along with a whole bunch of other folks, getting all kinds of brochures for everybody from Tom Cotton all the way down to Shane Stacks, who was running for Justice of the Peace, and getting all those flyers together and punching a hole in them and going doors. We did make lists. We were able to do strategy, and we were able to do it without consultants. We did not need the overpriced, overrated, never held to account consultants. And this is a statement here. That's not how Arkansas went red, not because of consultants. And back then, the Republican Party committee chairs really weren't that much either. The Republican Party committees were just there to provide free labor to these candidates who then worked for consultants. And then it was just a big country club back in that time. And so she talks along this article. I'm not going to read the whole thing. She has somewhat of a timeline. We kicked Blanche Lincoln out, replaced her with John Bozeman. Now it's pretty evident that we need to replace John Bozeman. Mark Pryor was kicked out by Tom Cotton. Asa Hutchinson succeeded Mike Beebe. I forgot who they had for governor. They were supposed to have, what's that guy's name? He was the attorney general, and he got caught in some kind of deal involving death and drug deal. He was the Democrat attorney general at the time. I can't remember his name, but Asa Hutchinson, he was supposed to be governor, and he got caught in that scandal. They tried to put somebody else up, and Asa Hutchinson was allowed to be in governor because of us. We now realize that he was just nothing but a China puppet. And in fact, we might as well have had a Democrat for governor. So we become a majority, and then we become a super majority. The establishment didn't just return in 2020. They kind of were there beforehand with Asa Hutchinson. And we saw that when we tried to get rid of Obamacare Medicaid expansion. And of course, people like myself decided, okay, if we just put in one more Republican in the Arkansas Senate, that was John Cooper, we can block the funding to Obamacare Medicaid expansion, the biggest expansion of government in state history, and we can get rid of it. But that didn't happen. John Cooper flipped on us, and the guy who managed his campaign and tricked me and others into running is still in power in the Republican Party. So this is a little bit off. The establishment really was really there. They just kind of hid themselves, and they stabbed us in the back. And so the Tea Party went dormant. A lot of people that were involved in it passed away. A lot of them just got burned out. There's never been funding for it. It's not like the No Kings protest. So you can you can type in who funds No Kings. I'll show you an example of this. Who pays for the No Kings protest that you see every other week? And it's for some other excuse. Warren Buffett, Ford, Rockefeller, these people have fake charities that call foundations. The Tides, these are foundations that they have. You can see the millions of dollars. $294 million is used to bankroll the No Kings protest. Now, I don't know if this breaks it down by city or state. It's a little bit small in the writing there. And shout out to Jessica Stormy Lady 918, who is replying to Democrat Congressman Eric Fang Swalwell. I don't even know who's funding to. Okay, this is a little more detail of this, and you can see these all over. Nurse Dawn's RX, thank you for that. Supposedly nobody got paid. Supposedly Antifa doesn't exist. But yeah, there's money that gets through to them. The Tea Party didn't get any of these type of resources. Nowhere near it. Even at their height, they would have donations, but it was nothing like this. And sadly, that one of the problems with the Republican Party is that it fails to bankroll grassroots efforts. It fails to put money into what we call boots on the ground, door knocking, phone banking. And other organizations like Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA and groups like Americans for Prosperity have had to step up and take their place. That's why they had to be formed in the first place, because the Republican Party didn't bother and hasn't bothered and still has this policy of not funding ground game. Here's an example, right? Yeah, we have I've mentioned this group before. I mentioned this in the last broadcast. This is the group Share a Tax Truth. Make sure I'm still on broadcast here. And they're trying to fight a $93 million tax increase. And a few years ago, your local Republican county committee wouldn't have cared about these. I know, because when I tried to fight these tax increases, when I campaigned against these tax increases, it was next to nothing in terms of help from the Republican Party. It was the Tea Party. The North Little Rock sales and tax increase of 2017, the Bryant millage tax increase, the Monticello tax increase a few years ago, the tax increase in Northwest Arkansas, it was the Libertarians and Americans for Prosperity, Conduit News, and people like me who led the effort in defeating those kind of tax increases. That's what we did. And in many cases, Republican justices of the peace were the ones that proposed them and campaigned for them. So anyway, I've been bouncing around a little bit. The basic tone of the article is that conservatives were the ones that turned Arkansas red. You turn Arkansas red. People like Colt Shelby turn Arkansas red. People like Jeannie Bullsworth, Debbie Pelley. I could go on, list a whole bunch of other people. They are the ones that turned Arkansas red. Conduit News. People like this. Here, I'll post a link to this video so you can share. It's about 20 minutes. I'm not going to read the whole thing. So remember that when you see this is from one of the consultants. This consultant, as I mentioned before, is on the Republican Party of Arkansas Rules Committee. He is also the de facto manager of several campaigns. And this is in his bio. This is JCD Consulting. This is Chase Duggar. He's the founder and president. And this is part of his own bio. A testament to his early success, Chase was named executive director of the Republican Party of Arkansas at the age of 25, the youngest person in the nation to hold that role at the time. He oversaw the recruitment of a number of Republican candidates and directed the 2010 midterm election strategy. No, he did not. That is an absolute lie, which delivered the party's most significant gains in Arkansas since Reconstruction. No, it was the Tea Party that did that. But just for fun, I'm going to take this little comment. I'm going to put it in Val Emmons' little article and see what people think about that. Just for the fun of it. I'll see what happens. And actually, while I do that, I'm going to take a little bit of a break. I have a video up. It's not from Conduit. It was from another event. Actually, I'll go ahead and play the rest of this. I'll play a little bit more of this while I type something in here.
Taxation without representation. And I'm sure that it certainly feels that way for a lot of those residents there. You know, what would you say to that argument?
Yes, I did it too. It's actually really interesting. This is where I kind of geek out a little bit because like I've gone back to the Federalist Papers, right? And I can't
Yeah.
reread the entirety of the Federalist Papers in the couple of weeks before we go to court, but it really is, some of the ideas that we're talking about are so fundamental that they predate the American Revolution, not just the Constitution. So what you see in the Constitution is you don't see the words no taxation without representation in the Constitution. You don't
Mhm.
see that in our case law or in our statutes, really. What you see is a Constitution that was built based upon that framework, that our United States and our Arkansas constitutions were built on an entire structure that's focused on making sure that we have a representative form of government, that we go to elections, we vote for the person to represent them, and we let that person show up and make these choices for us. And so from a legal perspective, it's been really interesting. Every day I'm finding new law and new sort of avenues for the argument of the unconstitutionality of this act, but it's largely because this is so fundamental that the right to have a representative stand up for you and represent you, especially when we're talking about spending taxpayer money, especially in that context. I mean, they should have it for all reasons all the time. Of course, sometimes vacancies happen, and you're without representation for a limited time, but never this long. And there's no reason to wait until June. It's just it's an excessive amount of time given the fact that we have elections all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to talk more about that. But I also noticed that, we're talking about Franklin County, but you filed this lawsuit in Pulaski County. Why did you do that?
I lost so much sleep about this one. I will tell you, just sort of because it's the right thing to do, I really wanted to file in Franklin County. I really wanted, I believe, I feel very strongly that we would have a good resolution and a reasoned decision from judges in the Franklin County District as well as Pulaski County. I think we are going to get a fair and impartial judicial system assessment of this.
Well, turns out she was right. So, folks, those are the main two things I want to talk about. Conservatives led the effort in turning Arkansas red, but we do have a long way to go. And an important factor is making sure we kick out the Rhino incumbent class that has pretended to take credit for what we did and is now trying to actively sabotage what we're doing. This is just updates from Truth Social. Nothing particularly special. Today at noon, if you want to, you can look at a White House briefing regarding Press Secretary Karen LaVette's. I'm sure she'll have a lot to talk about. There's a lot with the Schumer shutdown. There's stuff going on with Hamas. Oh, what's his name? The Soros puppet in Ukraine wants Tomahawk missiles, which he'll probably sell to the black market. But I saw this interesting as well. One thing we talk about is the culture war, and there's a lot of things I mentioned before yesterday. Most of these tax increases that are in Arkansas that are happening November 18th, they're for sports complexes. And I've often said, look, if the school cares more about sports and academics, and they care more about having pep rallies than having studies, and they care more about rewarding people for who can do a sport instead of who can achieve, who can actually study and learn. I mean, if the school's nothing but a recruitment center for the NBA and the NCAA and all these other sports, multi-billion-dollar sports industry, just have them pay for it. Just advertise for them. You want to just put an NBA logo on the high school in the arena and have them pay for it, along with these other banks and these other rich folks in town. Have them be sponsors. You see that at the baseball stadiums. You'll see Chico bail bonds. I think that was the one in Bad News Bears. They sponsored a team there. Let them put up a billboard. But apparently, this is another issue regarding the sports arena. The FBI announced its historic arrest spanning the NBA and La Cosa Nostra. That's the mafia, the Italian mafia. They're still around. And so they did illegal gambling and gang ringing. Multiple crime families. Over 30 people arrested across 11 states, including NBA players and coaches. This is huge. And sadly, of course, most people care more about this than everything else. I just saw this before I started this broadcast, and maybe I'll dig a little more into it. I'm just going to play a little bit of this right here, if I can get the volume and get it to play.
To announce a historic arrest across a wide-sweeping criminal enterprise that envelops both the NBA and La Casa Nostra. The men and women up here standing with me represent a small portion of the leadership team that brought profound justice in an era that needed it more than any. I'll just highlight some of the details in the case and the FBI work, and then you'll hear from the others. But as you now know, individuals such as Chauncey Billups, Damon Jones, and Terry Rozier were taken into custody today, former, current NBA players and coaches. What you don't know is that this is an illegal gambling operation and sports rigging operation that spanned the course of years. The FBI led a coordinated takedown across 11 states to arrest over 30 individuals today responsible for this case, which is very much ongoing. Not only did we crack into the fraud that these perpetrators committed on the grand stage of the NBA, but we also entered and executed a system of justice against La Casa Nostra to include the Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchesi crime families. And you'll hear more about those details today. The charges and the arrests that were taken down across this country range from wire fraud, money laundering, extortion, robbery, illegal gambling. This FBI will leave no room for any perpetrator of crime across this country. You hear a lot about our work of defending the homeland and crushing violent crime. Well, this work is also representative of a colossal portion of the FBI's mandate to keep America safe and to keep our entertainment industry fair and secure.
Well, folks, there it is. Your sports, which a lot of your schools care far more about than academics. That's what your kids are being groomed into worshiping. That's what some people will go in the debt over. But anyway, that's just what I wanted to talk about briefly. Just want to give a quick update on a few in this thing. Again, great victory, but stay involved. I know it's hard. A lot of people wanting to quit. I know there's lots of infighting and lots of other things that happen within the Republican Party of Arkansas. You're going to get betrayed. I've been betrayed, as I mentioned before. This guy right here tricked me and others into going up and helping John Cooper. And I ended up being used to help put a guy that betrayed us. He voted for Obamacare Medicaid expansion. He would later vote on against the Constitution carry bill that was done a few sessions ago. So conservatives in Northeast Arkansas had to primary him to kick him out. And since then, people like this guy and Chris Caldwell and others have systematically kicked conservatives out of the Republican Party. And this is, I didn't put his picture in here. There's Chris Caldwell. And you can see why. They're not really Republicans. They work for these organizations, the Association of County Judges, which is the Association of Counties, Big Energy, the Arkansas Trucking Association, which still was just pro letting truck drivers from out of the country that don't speak English drive on our highways. The casinos, Big Medicine, lots of other special interests that are opposed to the principles of the Republican Party. They shouldn't be in any position of power, but they are. This guy, as I've mentioned before, has shut down meetings, and they need to be kicked out. So, of course, if I say something and I don't tell you what to do, it doesn't do any good. So what you can do is find out when you see someone running for office, find out who their campaign manager is, make that an issue. If it's somebody that has these people as clients, tell them that's an issue. Tell them you can even say, look, I'm not going to vote for you if this guy's going to be your campaign manager. I'm not going to knock on doors and make phone calls to work for these clowns for free. And of course, you can find your local conservative group. Nowadays, a lot of the Republican county committees, despite the efforts of Sarah Huckabee Sanders and others like these folks, are conservative. Find out what their status is. If they are conservative, find a way to help them get involved. clean house, just like Charlie Kirk did regarding Ronna McDaniel. Yeah, if Charlie Kirk had not kicked out Ronna McDaniel, and we probably would be having a President Kamala Harris by now. And of course, it'd be just Soros 3.0. Because Biden did whatever Soros did, and so, before him it was Obama, the first mulatto president. No, he's as mulatto as I am. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about. Find a way to get involved. Remember, when the righteous rule, the people rejoice. When the wicked rule, the people groan. This time now we have all right. You all have a good day.